my entitled son and his big spending wife found out that I had secretly bought a retirement home for $500,000 in the quietest neighborhood in Peoria. But instead of being happy for me, they showed up just 2 days later with a store-bought cake and a quitclaim deed hidden in her purse, demanding I sign ownership over to them for my own protection. That was when I calmly set down my tea and handed them my own black leather binder. And what was written inside didn't just stop their scheme cold. It made them realize that they lost everything before they even walked through my door. But let me tell you how I got to that moment, because the story didn't start that day. They say you can't take it with you when you go. That's what people tell you when they want you to spend your money on them instead of yourself. But I'm 68 years old, and I've learned something important. You can't take it with you, but you sure can use it to enjoy the time you have left. Sign right here, Ms. Thomas, the delivery man said, holding out a digital pad. I took the stylus. My hand didn't shake, not even a little bit. I signed my name, Margie Thomas, with a flourish I hadn't used in years. Enjoy your new sofa, he said, tipping his cap. I watched him walk back to the truck. I watched the heavy doors of the van slam shut. I watched the engine roar to life and the vehicle rumble down the street, disappearing around the bend of my quiet tree-lined neighborhood here in Peoria. And then silence. I closed my front door and leaned my back against it. I closed my eyes and just listened. Do you know what I heard? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No television blaring sports from the other room. No husband asking where his blue socks were. No grown son banging on the door asking for a short-term loan because he couldn't make rent again. Just the hum of my brand new refrigerator and the chirping of a cardinal in the backyard. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. I pushed off the door and walked into the living room. It smelled like fresh paint and expensive fabric. For 40 years, I worked on my feet in retail. I spent 4 decades folding other people's clothes, scanning other people's groceries, and smiling when I wanted to scream. I came home to a house that was always loud, always messy, and always demanding something from me. My husband, bless his soul, passed away 5 years ago. I loved him, I did, but he wasn't good with money. When he got sick, what little savings we had drained away like water in a cracked bucket. When he died, everyone looked at me with those pitying eyes. They thought, poor Margie, she's all alone. She's going to struggle. They didn't know me. I walked over to the new cream-colored sofa. It cost $3,000. 5 years ago, I would have had a heart attack at that price tag. I would have looked for something used, something covered in plastic, something practical. But today, I sat down in the center of it. I ran my hand over the velvet. It was soft. It was mine. People think that when you're a widow on a fixed income, you just have to pinch pennies until you fade away. I didn't do that. After the funeral, after the casseroles stopped coming, I sat down at my kitchen table with my husband's life insurance check. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to start. I didn't just stick it in a savings account earning 0 interest. I went to the library. I read. I learned about index funds. I learned about conservative growth portfolios. I learned that if I didn't make my money work, I would end up being a burden on my son, Ramon. And knowing Ramon, being a burden on him would mean starving to death. I made smart moves. I sold the old house right when the market peaked. I downsized my life, sold the clutter, and invested the difference. I lived quietly. I drove my old car until the wheels nearly fell off. I didn't go on vacations. I didn't buy new clothes. I had a goal, and now I was standing in it. I got up and walked to the kitchen. The granite countertops were cool under my fingertips. This house cost $500,000. To some people, that's just a starter home. To me, it was a palace. It was a $500,000 fortress against the chaos of the world. I poured myself a glass of iced tea and walked out the back sliding glass doors. The morning sun was hitting the garden perfectly. The previous owners had planted hydrangeas and roses, and they were in full bloom. The air smelled like cut grass and freedom. I walked to the edge of the property line. There was still a real estate sign sticking in the grass near the road. It had a big red sticker slapped across it. Sold. I reached out and touched the wood of the signpost. It felt rough and real. This is mine, I whispered to the empty street. I needed to say it out loud. I needed the universe to hear me. This is mine. Nobody takes this from me. I had spent my whole life being a daughter, a wife, a mother. I was always Ramon's mom or Bill's wife. I was the one who fixed things. I was the safety net. If Bill overspent, Margie fixed the budget. If Ramon dropped out of college or quit a job because the boss was too demanding, Margie was there with a hot meal and a check to cover his bills. I looked at my hands. They were wrinkled now, showing the map of 68 years of hard work. These hands had scrubbed floors, changed diapers, and counted inventory until my fingers cramped. These hands had earned this peace. But peace is a fragile thing. I knew that. I took a sip of my tea, letting the cold liquid cool. The knot of anxiety that always sat in my stomach when I thought about my family. I hadn't told them yet. I hadn't told Ramon. I hadn't told his wife, Beverly. They thought I was still living in that cramped 2-bedroom rental on the loud side of town. They thought I was scraping by on Social Security. They liked it that way. It made them feel superior. It made them feel like they didn't have to worry about me because I had nothing worth taking. If they knew about this house, if they knew about the nest egg I had built, I shuddered, despite the warm sun. Ramon wasn't a bad kid when he was little. He had big eyes and a sweet smile. But somewhere along the line, he stopped trying. He realized that it was easier to complain than to work. And then he met Beverly, who always had a new designer purse, but couldn't afford to buy her own lunch. Beverly, who looked at me like I was a piece of old furniture that needed to be put out on the curb. I looked back at my house, my beautiful, sturdy, paid-for house. It wasn't just a building. It was my line in the sand. It was the physical proof that I mattered. I turned to go back inside. As I stepped into the cool air conditioning of the kitchen, the silence was broken. BZZT, BZCT, BZZT. My phone was vibrating on the marble island. I froze. My heart did that silly little jump it always does when I'm caught off guard. I walked over to it slowly, like it was a bomb that might go off. I looked at the screen. The name flashed in bright white letters, Ramon. I stared at it. He never called in the morning. He only called when he needed something, usually money, sometimes a babysitter, always a favor. My thumb hovered over the green button. Old habits are hard to break. The mother in me wanted to answer. What if he's hurt? What if something is wrong? But then I looked around my kitchen. I looked at my clean counters. I listened to the silence. If I answered, the chaos would start. The guilt trips. The demands. The drama. Not today, I said softly. I watched the screen until it went dark. I didn't decline the call. I just let it ring until it went to voicemail. I knew why he was calling. I could feel it in my bones. Mothers always know. He didn't know about the house yet. I was sure of that. I had been careful. I used a different mailing address. I didn't post on social media. But sharks can smell blood in the water from miles away. And somehow, Ramon sensed that his mother finally had something worth taking. I put the phone face down on the counter. The red light blinked, notifying me of a voicemail. I ignored it. I picked up my iced tea and walked back to my new living room. I sat on my new sofa. I was going to enjoy my coffee. I was going to enjoy my silence, because I had a feeling that the war was coming to my doorstep very, very soon. It took exactly 48 hours for my peace to be shattered. 2 days. That was all I got. I was in the front yard, kneeling on a foam pad, pulling a few stray weeds from the flower bed near the porch. It was a Tuesday around 10 in the morning. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear a dog bark 3 streets over. Then I heard it, a car engine that sounded more like a dying lawnmower than a vehicle, a rattling, wheezing, clanking noise that grew louder and louder as it turned onto my street. I didn't even have to look up to know who it was. I knew that sound. It was the sound of bad decisions and neglected maintenance. It was the sound of my son, Ramon. I stayed on my knees for a moment, my hands deep in the soil. I took a breath, holding the cool dirt in my gloved fingers. Here we go, I thought. The honeymoon is over. I stood up and brushed the dirt off my knees just as the car pulled into my pristine concrete driveway. It was a gray sedan, at least 12 years old, with a dent in the rear bumper that had been there since Thanksgiving of 2019. Smoke puffed out of the exhaust pipe, leaving a dark smudge in the air. The driver's door opened, and Ramon stepped out. My heart sank a little. It always does. You raise a child. You love them. You wipe their noses and cheer at their little league games, hoping they turn into strong, capable men. And then you see them at 42, looking like they just rolled out of bed at noon. He was wearing a suit, but it didn't fit right. The jacket was too tight across the shoulders, and the pants were wrinkled. It was his "I'm a businessman" costume. But what caught my eye immediately was the flash of gold on his wrist. A watch. A big, thick, gold watch that caught the sunlight. I looked from the smoking tailpipe of his car to the heavy gold on his wrist. That was Ramon in a nutshell. He couldn't afford an oil change, but he could afford to look rich for strangers. The passenger door opened, and Beverly climbed out. She was struggling with something in her lap. She stood up, smoothed down her dress, a floral print that was a little too fancy for a Tuesday morning visit, and plastered a smile on her face. It was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes were scanning the house, the yard, the windows. She was holding a white bakery box in one hand and a sad-looking potted plant in the other. "Mom," Ramon shouted, spreading his arms wide as if we hadn't just ignored each other for months. Surprise! They walked up the driveway. I stayed on the porch, taking off my gardening gloves slowly. I didn't smile back. I couldn't force it. "Ramon," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Beverly, this is unexpected. We were just in the area." Ramon lied. He was a terrible liar. He blinked too much when he wasn't telling the truth. "We thought we'd swing by and see the new place. You didn't even tell us you moved." "I've been busy," I said. "How did you find the address?" Beverly chimed in, her voice high and sugary. "Oh, you know how small this town is, Margie. Cousin Linda mentioned she saw you at the closing office. We were just so happy for you. We had to come celebrate." She thrust the potted plant at me. It was a grocery store, Mum, wrapped in shiny green foil. I could see the orange price sticker still half peeled off on the bottom of the pot. $8.99. "And we brought cake," Ramon added, lifting the white box. "Housewarming party." They were trying so hard, too hard. Usually when they visited, they walked in, flopped on the couch, and asked what was for dinner. They never brought gifts. They never brought food. They took. That was the dynamic. We give, they take. So this, the smiles, the cake, the plant, this was a strategy. This was a Trojan horse. They were wheeling themselves into my fortress pretending to be gifts, but I knew there were soldiers waiting inside to attack. "Well," I said, unlocking the front door. "You're here now. Come in." I watched them step over the threshold. It felt like a violation. My sanctuary was suddenly crowded. Beverly gasped. It was a theatrical, over-the-top gasp. Oh my goodness! Ramon, look at these floors. She walked into the living room, her heels clicking loudly on the hardwood. She wasn't looking at the decor. She wasn't looking at the pictures of her own children I had placed on the mantel. She was looking at the structure. High ceilings, she muttered, nodding to herself. Crown molding. Ramon whistled. Mom, you were holding out on us. This place is huge. How much did this set you back? It's comfortable, I said, dodging the question. It's just enough for me. Just enough. Ramon laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. Mom, this is a 4-bedroom colonial in the best school district in Peoria. It's more than enough. I walked to the kitchen to get plates for the cake I didn't want. They followed me like puppies, or rather, like inspectors. This was the test. This was the tell. If a friend comes to your new house, they say things like, I love the color of the walls, or this kitchen will be great for Christmas cookies. They talk about living in the house. Ramon and Beverly were talking about the house as an asset. I set the plates down on the island. Beverly ran her hand along the edge of the counter. It was a slab of beautiful, speckled granite. She caressed it, her long fingernails tapping against the stone. She leaned in close to Ramon, thinking I was out of earshot because I had turned to the refrigerator to get the milk. But the acoustics in a big, empty kitchen are funny. Sound travels. Granite, Beverly whispered, not laminate. This adds at least $10,000 to the asking price. Ramon grunted in agreement. Hardwood throughout, too. No carpet to replace. My hand froze on the milk jug handle. Asking price? They weren't looking at my home. They were looking at a listing. They were already selling it in their minds. They were calculating equity. They were doing the math on my life. I took a deep breath, grabbed the milk, and turned around. My face was a mask of calm. I had practiced this face in the mirror for 40 years of marriage and motherhood. The face that says everything is fine, even when the house is burning down. Coffee? I asked. Please, Ramon said, pulling out one of my new bar stools and sitting down. He didn't ask if he could sit. He just claimed the space. He spun the gold watch on his wrist. So, Mom, we were really surprised. I mean, we thought you were broke. You always said you were on a fixed income. I am, I said, pouring the dark liquid into 3 mugs. I live on a budget. That hasn't changed. But this, he gestured around the room. This isn't a budget house, Mom. This is serious money. Did Dad leave you more than you told us? There it was, the first probe, the first little jab to see where the soft spot was. Your father left me enough to be safe, I said carefully, and I was careful with it. I invested. Beverly's eyes widened. Invested? You. She let out a short, sharp laugh, then covered her mouth. I mean, that's great, Margie. It's just we didn't know you knew about that stuff. There's a lot you don't know about me, Beverly, I said. I set the coffee down in front of her. I didn't offer sugar. She looked at the cake box on the counter. Well, we should celebrate. Cut the cake, Mom. We have so much to talk about. I looked at the cheap bakery box. I could see the condensation on the plastic window. The frosting was bright blue and yellow, probably left over from a generic birthday batch. It looked sickeningly sweet. Yes, Ramon said, leaning forward, his elbows on my granite island. We really need to talk. We've been worried about you, Mom. Living all alone. Managing a big place like this. It's a lot for a woman your age. I saw the look pass between them. It was a rehearsed look. They had practiced this in the car. They had a script. They thought I was the old Margie, the Margie who wrote checks to keep the peace, The Margie who believed their sob stories about bad luck and mean bosses. The Margie who was afraid of being alone. They didn't realize that the woman standing in this kitchen was different. This woman read financial reports for fun. This woman had negotiated with contractors and real estate sharks. This woman had built a sanctuary, and she wasn't about to let two wolves in sheep's clothing tear it down. I picked up the knife to cut the cake. The metal glinted in the sunlight streaming through my clean windows. Worried about me? I asked, slicing into the artificial blue frosting. That's sweet, but you don't need to worry. I have everything under control. Well, that's just it, Beverly said, taking the plate I handed her. We think you might think you have it under control. But families help each other, Margie, and we have an idea that's going to help everyone. I felt a chill go down my spine. Here it comes. The pitch. I took a sip of my black coffee. It was bitter, just the way I liked it. Is that so? I asked. Well then, eat your cake. I'm listening. I leaned back against the counter, crossing my arms over my chest. I watched them eat the cheap cake in my expensive kitchen. I watched Ramon adjust his flashy watch. I watched Beverly scan the room again, counting dollars. They thought they had trapped me. They thought they were the smart ones. They had no idea that I had already locked the gates. We moved from the kitchen to the living room. It's funny how the energy in a room changes depending on who is sitting in it. 10 minutes ago, this room felt like a sanctuary. It was light, airy, and mine. Now, with Ramon sprawled out on my brand new velvet armchair and Beverly perching on the edge of the sofa like a vulture waiting for roadkill, the air felt heavy. It felt suffocating. I sat in the corner chair, the one with the high back. I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug, seeking warmth. I didn't drink. I just held it. I needed to keep my hands occupied, so I wouldn't give away how tight my fists wanted to clench. So Ramon started crossing his legs. His sock had a hole in the toe. I stared at it. This place. It's really a lot, Mom. It's a lot of house, Beverly added quickly, nodding in that bobblehead way she does when she's trying to agree with her husband. 3 bathrooms to clean, a yard to maintain, the gutters, the roof. I took a slow sip of coffee. I have a gardener, I said softly, and the roof is brand new. 30-year warranty. Ramon waved his hand dismissively, as if facts didn't matter. Yeah, but warranties have loopholes. And gardeners quit. We're just thinking about the burden, Mom. The financial burden. The physical burden. He leaned forward, putting his elbows on his knees. He gave me that look, that I'm the man of the family now, look. It was the same look he gave me 15 years ago when he asked for $20,000 to start his revolutionary tech business. I remembered that day clearly. He had sat at my old kitchen table, full of passion and big words I didn't understand. He talked about servers and cloud computing. He told me I would triple my money in a year. He said he just needed a little help to get off the ground. I gave him the money. It was half of my emergency fund back then. 6 months later, the business was gone. There were no servers. There was no cloud. But there was a new jet ski in his driveway and a trip to Cancun on his credit card. When I asked him about the money, he just shrugged and said, "Startups are risky, Mom. You have to spend money to make money." It just didn't work out. He never paid me back. Not a dime. He never even apologized. "We just want what's best for you," Ramon said now, snapping me back to the present. "We don't want you to burn through Dad's money trying to keep up a mansion. You know how quickly savings can disappear." The irony almost made me laugh out loud. Yes, I know how quickly savings disappear, I thought. Especially when you have a son who treats his mother's bank account like an ATM. But I didn't say that. I just blinked slowly, trying to look a little overwhelmed. It was expensive, I admitted, lowering my voice. The down payment, it took almost everything. That was a lie. A bald-faced lie. I put 50% down and kept a healthy 6 figures in my investment accounts. But I needed them to think I was stretched thin. Wolves attack when they think the prey is weak. Beverly leaned in, her eyes wide, with fake sympathy. See, that's what we were afraid of. Your house, poor Margie. You're sitting in a big house with no cash flow. What happens if you get sick? What happens if you need care? I'm healthy, I said. Are you? Beverly tilted her head. Lately, we've noticed things. Little things. I looked at her. What things? Your memory, Mom, Ramon said, picking up the baton. You've been forgetting things. Like last week, I called you and you didn't answer. You forgot to call me back. I didn't forget. I ignored him because he was asking for money to fix his transmission. And remember Christmas? Beverly added, you mixed up the names on the gift tags. You gave little Timmy's gift to Sarah. I remembered that, too. I had swapped the tags on purpose because Sarah, Beverly's daughter from her first marriage, had been complaining that Timmy always got the better toys. I wanted the girl to have the expensive Lego set for once. It wasn't senility. It was justice. I suppose I have been a little scattered lately, I said, letting my voice tremble just a tiny bit. I set my coffee cup down on the coaster with a little clatter as if my hand was shaking. I saw Ramon's eyes light up. He saw the weakness. He pounced. Exactly, he said, his voice dropping to a soothing, patronizing tone. It happens to everyone, Mom. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it means you shouldn't be making huge financial decisions alone. You shouldn't be isolating yourself in a big house where nobody knows if you fall down the stairs. The stairs, I whispered, looking at the staircase in the foyer. They are steep. They're a death trap for someone your age, Beverly said bluntly. One slip, Margie. That's all it takes. Broken hip, hospital, rehab, and then who pays the mortgage while you're in a nursing home? They were painting a picture of my doom. They wanted me to feel small, fragile, and incompetent. They were gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt my own mind, my own body, my own choices. If this was 5 years ago, it might have worked. Grief makes you foggy. Loneliness makes you desperate for someone to tell you what to do. But today I was sharp as a tack. I was listening to every word, cataloging every manipulation. I remembered another time, Ramon claimed, he was worried about me. It was right after Bill died. He told me I shouldn't drive anymore because I was too emotional. He offered to take care of my car for me. He drove my pristine Buick for 3 months. When I finally demanded it back, the interior smelled like fast food and stale cigarettes, and there were 3 parking tickets in the glove box. He didn't care about my safety. He wanted my car. And now, he didn't care about my hips. He wanted my house. I just don't know what to do, I said, rubbing my temple. I thought I was doing the right thing. I wanted a nice place. You did the right thing by investing in real estate, Ramon said quickly. The house is a great asset. But the structure of the ownership, the management of it, that's where you messed up, Mom. You're vulnerable. Vulnerable. I repeated, yes, I feel vulnerable. Beverly reached over and patted my knee. Her hand felt cold. That's why we're here, Margie. We talked to a professional, a friend of ours. He explained how families deal with this. It's about asset protection. Asset protection, I thought. Protection from whom? From the nursing home? Or from you? We can fix this, Ramon said, leaning back and spreading his arms. We can make sure you're safe, and the house is safe. You stay here as long as you want. Nothing changes for you day to day. But on paper, we make sure the state can't take it. We make sure complications don't happen. That sounds complicated, I said. It's simple, Beverly said. It's just a signature. We handle the paperwork. We handle the taxes. You just live here and enjoy your garden. We take on the burden. The burden? They wanted to take the burden of a $500,000 asset off my hands. How generous. I looked at Ramon. He was trying to look serious, responsible. But I saw the greed in his eyes. He was already calculating how much he could borrow against the equity. He was probably planning to buy a new car next week. Maybe a boat this time. I looked at Beverly. She was looking at the chandelier, probably wondering how much she could sell it for on eBay. They thought I was an old, confused woman who had bitten off more than she could chew. They thought they had walked in here and found a helpless victim. I let out a long sigh, slouching a little in my chair. I am tired, I said truthfully. I'm tired of worrying about money. See, Ramon said, standing up. He paced around the room, energized by his own victory. You shouldn't have to worry. You've worked hard your whole life. Let us step up. Let us be the children you raised us to be. The children I raised you to be, I thought. I raised you to be honest. I raised you to work hard. I didn't raise you to scam your own mother. But I nodded. I looked up at him with wide, watery eyes. What do you propose, Ramon? I asked, what is this idea you have? I saw him reach into his inner suit pocket. I saw Beverly straighten up, her eyes locking onto him. The trap was set, but they didn't realize they were the ones stepping into it. Well, Ramon said, pulling out a folded document. It's funny you asked. We actually brought some paperwork, just in case you wanted to see what it looked like. No pressure, of course. But since we're all here, show me, I said softly. He walked over and placed the paper on the coffee table. He smoothed it out with his hand. I looked at the document. I didn't need my reading glasses to know what it was, but I reached into my pocket and put them on anyway. I wanted to see the fine print. I wanted to see exactly how little they thought of me. I leaned forward, acting like I was struggling to read the legal jargon. It looks very official, I murmured. It is, Ramon said. It's the solution, Mom. It's the answer to all your prayers. I looked at him over the rim of my glasses. Oh, Ramon, I thought. You have no idea what my prayers look like. Okay, I said. Tell me where to sign. I watched them exchange a glance. It was a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. They thought they had won. They thought the game was over. They didn't know the game hadn't even started yet. Ramon didn't waste a second. As soon as the words, "Tell me where to sign," left my lips, the atmosphere in the room shifted from casual to frantic. It was like watching a predator that had been lying in the tall grass suddenly sprint toward its prey. He practically leaped off the sofa to clear the coffee table. He shoved the half-eaten cake and the coffee mugs to the side, not caring that a splash of dark roast spilled onto my new oak coffee table. He didn't offer to wipe it up. He didn't even notice. His eyes were glued to the blue folder Beverly was pulling out of her purse. And let's talk about that purse. It was huge. When they walked in, I thought she just liked big bags. Now, I realized it was a mobile office. She hadn't just brought a cake. She had brought a filing cabinet. Here it is, Beverly said, her voice trembling with excitement. She slapped the folder down on the table and flipped it open. There were 3 copies. They had paper clipped them neatly. Yellow sticky notes with "Sign here" arrows were already attached to the bottom of the pages. We prepared this ourselves, Ramon said, beaming. Well, I downloaded the template from a legal site, but Beverly typed in the details. Saved us a fortune in legal fees. Lawyers just overcomplicate things, right, Mom? I leaned forward, adjusting my glasses. I looked at the bold text at the top of the page. Quitclaim deed. Underneath that, in smaller letters, it read, "Reserving life estate." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I knew exactly what this was. I had read about these things at the library when I was researching how to buy the house. A quitclaim deed transfers ownership immediately. If I signed this, the house wouldn't be mine anymore. It would belong to Ramon and Beverly. The life estate part sounded nice. It meant I had the legal right to live there until I died. But the ownership, the equity, the control, that would belong to them the second my pen left the paper. If I wanted to sell the house later to pay for medical bills, I couldn't. If I wanted to move to a condo in Florida, I couldn't sell this place without their permission. I was handing them the keys to my financial freedom, and they were framing it as a favor. It looks complicated, I said, playing dumb. I traced the words with my finger. Quitclaim? That sounds like I'm quitting. No, Mom, Ramon said quickly. He moved around the table and knelt beside my chair. He was too close. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath and the cheap cologne he wore to mask the smell of cigarettes. It's just legal talk. It means you're quitting the worry. You're quitting the liability. See this part? Beverly pointed to the paragraph about the life estate with a manicured nail. This says you live here forever. Nobody can kick you out. It guarantees you a home, Margie. We're securing your future. But why do I need to do this now? I asked, looking up at him. I just moved in. That's exactly why, Ramon said, his voice rising with urgency. The government, Mom, you know how they are. If you get sick, if you have to go to the hospital, they look at your assets. They see this big, expensive house, and they say, Margie has money. And they take it. They force you to sell it to pay the bills. They'll leave you with nothing, Beverly whispered, leaning in from the other side. We're trying to protect the family legacy. If you sign this, the house technically belongs to us. So if the government comes looking, you own nothing on paper. They can't touch it. We're saving you. It's a common scare tactic. I knew that. Yes, Medicaid has a look-back period. And yes, asset protection is real. But doing a DIY deed transfer at your kitchen table with your unemployed son isn't estate planning. It's theft. I don't know, I said, hesitating. It feels like I'm giving it away. Ramon's face hardened. The nice guy mask slipped for a second. You're not giving it away. You're keeping it in the family. Don't you trust us? It's not about trust, I said. It's my house. I paid for it. With Dad's money. Ramon snapped. The room went silent. He hadn't meant to yell, but the frustration was bubbling over. He took a breath and lowered his voice, but the edge was still there. Mom, listen to me. Dad worked himself into an early grave for that money. He stood on his feet for 40 years at the plant. He didn't do that, so the state of Illinois could take it all just because you fell and broke a hip. He did it for us, for the family. My heart hammered against my ribs. How dare he? How dare he bring Bill into this? Bill, who worked overtime, so Ramon could have braces. Bill, who drove an old truck, so Ramon could go to college. A college he dropped out of after 2 semesters because he didn't like the professors. Dad would want you to do this, Beverly added softly. She put her hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy, like a claw. He would want to know you're safe. He would want to know that Ramon is taken care of, too. This house, it's an inheritance, Margie. Why wait until you're gone and let the lawyers take a chunk? Give it to your son, now. Let him be the man of the house. The pressure was physical. They were crowding me. Ramon was kneeling on my right. Beverly was hovering on my left. They were sucking the air out of the room. I suppose Bill would want us to be smart. I whispered. Exactly. Ramon pulled a pen from his pocket. It wasn't a cheap Bic. It was a heavy metal pen. He clicked the top. Click. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. He pressed the pen into my hand. Just right here, he said, tapping the sticky note. And here. And then Beverly, and I will take it to the notary at the bank down the street. We'll handle the filing fees. You won't have to lift a finger. I looked at the pen in my hand. It felt cold. I looked at the paper. Grantor, Margie Thomas. Grantees, Ramon Thomas and Beverly Thomas. If I sign this, I became a tenant in my own home. If I signed this, they could borrow against the house. They could take out a second mortgage to pay off their debts. And if they defaulted, the bank would foreclose, and my life estate wouldn't mean a thing. I'd be on the street. I looked at Ramon. He was sweating. A tiny bead of perspiration was rolling down his temple. He was staring at the tip of the pen, like a starving dog staring at a steak. He wasn't worried about my health care. He wasn't worried about the government. He was looking at $500,000 of equity that he could tap into by Friday. Do it for the family, Mom, he urged. Just sign it, and we can celebrate. Please, Margie, Beverly said, don't be difficult. Don't be selfish. Selfish. That was the word that did it. For 40 years, I had been selfless. I gave until I was empty. And now, when I finally had something for myself, they called me selfish for wanting to keep it. I gripped the pen tighter. My knuckles turned white. I lowered the pen to the paper. The tip hovered just millimeters above the signature line. That's it, Ramon breathed out. Right there. I let the pen touch the paper. I saw Ramon's shoulders relax. I saw Beverly smirk. They thought they had me. They thought the old, weak, pliable Margie was doing exactly what she was told. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of their desperation. I said, stopping the pen from moving. There is one thing. Ramon froze. What? What is it? I just remembered something, I said, keeping the pen touching the paper, but not writing. Something the real estate agent told me. It doesn't matter what they said, Ramon said through gritted teeth. Just sign, Mom. No, it does matter, I said. I lifted the pen. Ramon looked like he was about to scream. What matters, Mom? I looked him dead in the eye. The fear was gone. The confusion was gone. I remembered that I can't sign this. I said calmly, because I don't own the house. I set the pen down. I didn't slam it. I didn't throw it. I just placed it gently on the coffee table, right next to their blue folder. The metal clicked against the wood. A small sound that seemed to echo like a gunshot in the quiet room. I sat back in my chair and folded my hands in my lap. I looked at Ramon, then at Beverly. I let the silence stretch. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds. I watched the color drain from Ramon's face, replaced instantly by a flush of angry red. He looked at the pen, then at me, then back at the pen. He looked like a child who had been promised a candy bar only to have the wrapper handed to him empty. Mom, he said, his voice tight, pick up the pen. What are you doing? I didn't move. I just breathed. For the first time all morning, I felt my heart rate slow down. The anxiety was gone. The fear was gone. Now, there was just the truth. I can't sign this, Ramon, I said softly. The explosion was immediate. Can't. Ramon shot up from the sofa, his hands balling into fists at his sides. What do you mean you can't? You just said you wanted to. You just said Dad would want us to be smart. You are being incredibly stubborn, Margie, Beverly snapped, her fake nice mask cracking completely. We explained this to you. This is for your protection. Why do you have to make everything so difficult? Do you want the government to take your house? Is that what you want? Sit down, Ramon, I said. I kept my voice low, calm. You're shouting in my house. I'm shouting because you're not listening, he yelled, pacing the rug in front of me. He looked frantic. We drove 2 hours to come here. We paid the filing fees for the paperwork. We are trying to help you, and you're acting like a senile old woman who doesn't know what's good for her. Ramon, Beverly warned, trying to reel him back in, but her eyes were cold, hard flint. Mom, listen. We know change is scary. We know you're attached to the idea of ownership. But this is just paper. It's just a formality. Don't be selfish. Think about the legacy. I watched them panic. It was pathetic, really. They weren't fighting for my safety. They were fighting for their payday. They had probably already spent the money in their heads. Maybe Ramon had promised someone he'd have cash by the end of the week. Maybe Beverly had a credit card bill due on Monday. I'm not being selfish, I said, looking Beverly dead in the eye. And I'm not being stubborn. When I said I can't sign it, I didn't mean I don't want to. I mean I legally cannot sign it. Ramon stopped pacing. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. What? I don't own this house, Ramon. I said, not in my name. They both froze. The room went dead silent again. What do you mean you don't own it? Ramon asked, his voice shaking. We saw the sold sign. You're living here. Are you renting? Did you lie to us? I bought it, I said. But Margie Thomas doesn't own the deed. I reached down to the side of my chair. I had placed my own folder there before they arrived. It wasn't blue and flimsy like theirs. It was a thick black leather binder. It looked official. It looked expensive. I lifted it onto the table and placed it directly on top of their quitclaim deed, covering their paperwork completely. Open it, I said. Ramon reached out, his hand trembling. He flipped the cover open. The Margie Thomas Irrevocable Trust. He read out loud. He frowned, looking up at me. What is this? A trust? That's fine. We can just amend the trust. We can make ourselves the trustees. It's the same thing. Read the next page. Ramon, I said, read the clause about the irrevocable nature of the agreement. He flipped the page. His eyes darted back and forth across the legal text. I saw the moment the words actually sank in. His face went pale. Irrevocable, Beverly whispered, leaning over his shoulder. That means it can't be changed? That is exactly what it means, I said. You see, when I bought this house, I didn't just buy it. I hired a frantically expensive estate attorney. A real one, not a template from the internet. I leaned forward, locking eyes with my son. I transferred the deed into this trust immediately. I explained. I am the primary beneficiary. While I am alive, I get to live here. I get to enjoy my garden. But I do not own the asset directly. The trust owns it. But you can change it. Ramon shouted, slamming his hand on the paper. You're the grantor. You can just revoke it. You can dissolve it and sign the deed over to us. I smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was firm. No, Ramon, I can't. That's what irrevocable means. Once the asset is in, it stays in. I signed away my right to change the terms. I did that specifically to protect myself from scammers, from the government, and from family members who might think they are entitled to things they didn't earn. You locked it? Beverly asked, her voice high and shrill. You locked the equity away? For what? Who gets it when you die? Read Section 4. I pointed. Ramon flipped the pages violently. He found Section 4. He read it silently, and then he made a noise I had never heard him make before. It was a strangled, choking sound. St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, he choked out. The Children's Hospital, I confirmed. And the local animal shelter. You gave my inheritance to dogs. Ramon screamed. I gave my money to a cause that matters to me. I corrected him. The instructions are strict, ironclad. The moment I pass away, or the moment I vacate this property permanently, the trust is instructed to sell the house immediately. 100% of the proceeds go to charity. Not a penny goes to any individual. Not to me. Not to you. You're lying, Beverly hissed. You can't do that. You can't just cut your own children out like that. I didn't cut you out, I said calmly. I just didn't include you. There is a difference. This house is for me. It is my sanctuary. It is not an investment vehicle for you. Ramon looked at the black binder like it was a bomb that had just blown off his hand. He looked at me with pure hatred. You knew, he said. You knew we were coming. I suspected, I said, but I did this weeks ago, Ramon. I did this the day I signed the papers. Because I know you. I know that you float through life waiting for a bailout. I know that you look at me and see a dollar sign, not a mother. That is not true, he yelled. We love you. We just wanted to be safe. If you wanted me to be safe, I said, my voice finally hardening into steel, then you should be happy. I am safe. The house is safe. Nobody can take it. Not the government. Not a nursing home. And not you. But we need. Ramon started, then stopped himself. He caught himself. You need what, Ramon? I asked. You need to borrow against it. You need a line of credit. You need to cash out my hard work to pay for your mistakes. He didn't answer. He just stared at the table. You can't, I said. Even if I wanted to help you right now, which I couldn't. I literally cannot sign your deed. The house isn't mine to give. It belongs to the trust. And the trust doesn't care about your debts. The realization hit them like a physical blow. The air went out of them. Beverly slumped back against the sofa cushions. Her big purse, the one holding the useless deed, slid off her shoulder and hit the floor with a heavy thud. Ramon looked around the room. He looked at the granite countertops he had appraised. He looked at the high ceilings. He realized that he was standing in a vault that he didn't have the combination for. So that's it, he whispered. It's gone. It was never yours to begin with. I said. I picked up my coffee cup. It was cold now, but I took a sip anyway. I suggest you put that blue folder back in your bag, Beverly, I said. And I suggest you take your cake with you. I'm watching my sugar intake. I watched as the reality set in. There would be no fight. There would be no lawsuit. You can't sue a piece of paper that was filed perfectly by a top-tier lawyer. They had walked into a trap that I had set before they even knew the game had started. They had come to rob me with a smile and a pen. They were leaving with nothing but the gas bill for the trip home. I looked at my son, a man of 42 who still hadn't learned that the only money you can count on is the money you earn yourself. Is there anything else? I asked. Or are we done here? You learn a lot about people when you tell them no. When you say, yes, everyone is smiling. Everyone is polite. But the moment you close the wallet, the moment you lock the door, the masks fall off. I watched it happen right there in my living room, faster than ice melting on a hot sidewalk. Are we done here? I had asked. Ramon didn't answer with words. He answered with a sound that was somewhere between a growl and a sob. He spun around, his face twisted into something ugly. The concern was gone. The worried son act was gone. The fake smile Beverly had plastered on her face vanished, replaced by a look of sheer, panic-stricken fury. Done. Ramon shouted. His voice cracked. No, we are not done. You can't just do this. You can't just give everything away to strangers. He pointed a shaking finger at the black binder on the table. That money belongs to this family. It belongs to me. I am your son. I am your flesh and blood. I sat perfectly still. Flesh and blood, I repeated calmly. That's a biologic fact, Ramon. It's not a financial contract. Don't you get smart with me? He screamed. He was losing control now. He kicked the leg of the coffee table. My beautiful, new oak table skidded an inch on the rug. You think you're so clever? You think you're better than us? You're just a selfish old woman hoarding a fortune while your family suffers. Suffers? I looked at his suit. I looked at the gold watch. You don't look like you're suffering, Ramon. You look like you're living quite well. It's all for show. Beverly shrieked. She jumped up from the sofa, her hands clenching into claws at her sides. You don't understand anything. You sit here in your ivory tower with your paid-off house and your investments, and you have no idea what the real world is like. Then tell me, I said, tell me about the real world. Beverly, we are drowning, she yelled. Tears of rage started to stream down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. We are up to our eyeballs, Margie. The business loans, the credit cards, the car notes, we can't breathe. We needed this. We needed the equity. The truth finally poured out. It was ugly, but at least it was honest. We have debts, she continued, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. We have a balloon payment due on the house in 2 months. If we don't come up with $50,000, the bank is going to foreclose on us. We're going to lose everything. Ramon slumped onto the arm of the sofa, putting his head in his hands. We just needed a bridge loan, he muttered into his palms. We were going to borrow against this house, pay off the high-interest stuff, and then pay it back. We had a plan. A plan, I said softly. And did this plan involve asking me, or did it involve tricking me into signing a deed, so you could mortgage my home behind my back? Ramon looked up. His eyes were red. We didn't want to worry you. You didn't want to worry me. I scoffed. You didn't want to ask me, because you knew I would say no. You didn't want a loan, Ramon. You wanted a victim. We are your family, he roared again, standing up. You're supposed to help us. That's what mothers do. They sacrifice. You sacrificed for me. When I was a kid, why did you stop? Why did you get so cold? I didn't get cold. I said, I got smart. You're cruel, Beverly spat. You're sitting on $500,000 of equity that could save our lives, and you locked it up in a trust for 4 sick kids and stray dogs. You care more about animals than your own grandchildren. Don't bring the grandchildren into this. I warned, my voice dropping an octave. You didn't ask for money for their college funds. You wanted money to pay for the lifestyle you can't afford. You wanted money to pay for that watch on Ramon's wrist. This watch is a fake. Ramon yelled, ripping it off his wrist and throwing it onto the couch. It's a knockoff. Everything is a fake, Mom. We are broke. Are you happy now? We are completely broke. The room fell silent again, save for their heavy breathing. They looked at me, expecting me to crumble. They expected the guilt to finally hit. They thought that if they screamed loud enough, if they cried hard enough, if they showed me their desperation, the mother in me would override the investor in me. They thought I would reach for the phone and call the lawyer to see if the trust could be undone. I looked at them. I looked at my son, a man of 42 who was throwing a tantrum because he couldn't rob his mother. I looked at his wife, who felt entitled to the sweat off my husband's brow. I know, I said. Ramon blinked. What? I said, I know. I repeated, I know you're broke. I know about the balloon payment. I know about the 3 credit cards you maxed out last Christmas. Beverly froze. How could you possibly know that? Because I'm not the clueless old widow you think I am. I said, I know how to use a computer. Beverly, I know how to check public records. I saw the pre-foreclosure notice filed on your house 3 weeks ago. It's public information in the county clerk's database. Their mouths dropped open. They looked at me like I was a wizard who had just cast a spell. And I know about the business you started last year. Ramon, I continued, turning my gaze to him. The consulting firm? I looked up the filing. Dissolved 4 months later. I also saw the lien the IRS placed against you for unpaid taxes. Ramon turned pale. You checked up on me? I protected myself. I corrected him. When I got the settlement from your father's insurance, I knew you would come. I knew it was only a matter of time. So I started watching. I watched you buy things you couldn't afford. I watched you take vacations on credit. I watched you dig a hole so deep that you couldn't climb out of it. And you didn't say anything? Ramon whispered. You watched us drown, and you didn't say a word. I waited, I said. I waited for you to come to me and tell the truth. If you had come here today, if you had walked through that door and said, Mom, we made mistakes. We are in trouble. We are scared. Can you help us figure this out? If you had done that, things might be different. I paused, letting the weight of that sink in. I wouldn't have given you the house, I said, but I might have helped you with a financial planner. I might have helped you budget. I might have bought you groceries. I would have been your mother. I stood up from my chair. I felt tall. I felt strong. But you didn't come for a mother, I said, looking down at them. You came for a bank. You came with a scheme. You came with a fake cake and a fake smile and a legal document designed to strip me of my security. You tried to trick me, and that is why you get nothing. You can't mean that, Beverly whimpered. Please, Margie, we'll lose the house. Then you lose the house, I said simply. And maybe then you'll learn to live within your means. That is a lesson I cannot buy for you. You have to learn it the hard way. You're a monster, Ramon whispered. No, Ramon, I said, I'm a retired retail worker who saved her money. I am a widow who learned to stand on her own 2 feet. And I am a woman who refuses to be a victim in her own home. I pointed to the door. The mask is off now, I said. I see you. I see both of you. And frankly, I don't like what I see. Pack up your papers. Take your fake watch. And get out of my sanctuary. Ramon stood up slowly. He looked like an old man. The energy was gone. The anger was gone. There was only defeat. He grabbed the blue folder with the quitclaim deed, the paper that was now worth less than a napkin. He shoved it into his pocket. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. Beverly grabbed her purse. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. She shot me one last look of pure venom, but she didn't say a word. She knew she had lost. She knew she had gambled everything on me being weak, and she had lost against a woman who was made of iron. They turned toward the hallway, and Ramon, I called out just before they reached the foyer. He stopped, his back to me. Don't worry about the government taking my house, I said. I've got it covered. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't need to. When you hold all the cards, you don't need to raise your voice. You just need to point to the exit. Get out, I said. It wasn't a question. It was a command. It was the kind of tone I used to use when Ramon was a teenager, and I caught him sneaking in past curfew. It was the voice of a mother who was done negotiating. Ramon stood there in the hallway, looking like a deflated balloon. His suit, which had looked so sharp when he walked in, now seemed to hang off him. He looked smaller. He looked like a boy who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar, except the jar was empty, and he was the one who broke it. Beverly was already clutching her purse to her chest, her eyes darting toward the front door. She knew the game was up. She was a survivor in her own twisted way. She knew when to cut her losses and run. But Ramon, he had too much pride, or maybe it was just desperation. He couldn't let it go. He couldn't walk away from the jackpot. He thought he had won. You can't kick us out, he stammered, his face flushing a deep, angry red. We drove 2 hours to get here. We're family. You can't just throw us out like strangers. I can, I said, walking past him to the front door. And I am. This is my property. And right now, you are trespassing. I reached the heavy oak door and unlocked it. I pulled it open, letting the bright, midday sun flood into the entryway. The light was blinding compared to the tension inside. It felt like the world outside was waiting for them, hot and indifferent. Go, I said, holding the door open. Ramon didn't move. He stood his ground, planting his feet on my hardwood floor. He looked at me with a mix of disbelief and fury. You're going to regret this, Mom, he spat. The word, Mom, sounded like a curse. You think you're so smart with your trust and your secrets? You think you won? This isn't over. It is over, Ramon, I said. It was over before you even pulled into the driveway. No, he shouted. He pointed a shaking finger at me. I'm going to get a lawyer. A real one. Not some internet template. We're going to sue you. We're going to sue the trust. We'll prove you were incompetent. We'll prove you were coerced. There are laws against this. Mom, you can't just disinherit your own children. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. I saw the panic in his eyes. He was flailing. He was drowning and trying to pull me down with him. And then I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a dry, short sound. It surprised even me. Go ahead, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Please, spend the money you don't have on a lawyer. Drag this into court. Show a judge the documents. Show him the irrevocable trust that was filed by one of the best estate attorneys in the state. Show him the medical records that prove I am of sound mind. Show him your own financial records that prove you're desperate. I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of pity mixed with my anger. Do you know what a judge will tell you, Ramon? He'll tell you exactly what I just told you. The house belongs to the trust, and you have no claim to it. You will lose, and you will be left with nothing but legal fees. You. He couldn't even find the words. Come on, Ramon, Beverly hissed, grabbing his arm. She was pulling him now, trying to drag him toward the door. She wanted to leave. She wanted to get away from the humiliation. Let's go. She's crazy. She's lost her mind. We'll deal with this later. I haven't lost my mind, Beverly, I said as she tugged him past me. I finally found it. They stepped out onto the porch. The heat of the Illinois afternoon hit them instantly. I watched them cross the threshold. It felt like watching a dark cloud finally pass over the sun. Ramon stopped on the top step. He turned around one last time. I thought he was going to apologize. I thought, for just a split second, that my son might be in there somewhere. I hope you're happy, he said, his voice dripping with venom. I hope you enjoy dying alone in this big, empty house. It was a cruel thing to say. It was meant to hurt. It was meant to make me afraid of the silence. But I wasn't afraid. I won't be alone, I said softly. I'll be at peace. And that is better than being in bad company. I didn't wait for his response. I didn't want to hear it. I watched them walk down the front walkway. Their footsteps were heavy. They looked defeated. The confident stride they had arrived with was gone. They looked like what they were, two people who had gambled and lost. They reached the driveway. Ramon's car was sitting there, baking in the sun. The gray paint was peeling on the hood. A dark stain of oil had formed on my clean concrete underneath the engine. Ramon fumbled with his keys. He dropped them on the pavement. He swore loudly, a harsh, ugly word that echoed in the quiet neighborhood. He bent down to pick them up, and when he stood up, he kicked the front tire of his car. Thump. It was a childish, impotent gesture. He kicked it again. Thump. He was taking his anger out on the only thing he actually owned. Damn it, he screamed at the car, at the sky, at me. I saw Mrs. Higgins' next-door peek through her curtains. I saw the mailman pause at the end of the cul-de-sac. Ramon was making a scene. He was showing the world exactly who he was. Beverly didn't wait for him to open her door. She yanked the passenger door open and threw herself inside. She was probably already on her phone, looking for the next person she could borrow money from. Ramon glared at me one last time. He looked at the house, the brick, the windows, the garden, and I saw the pure envy in his face. He wanted it so bad. He felt he deserved it. He couldn't understand why the world wouldn't just give it to him. He got into the driver's seat and slammed the door. The sound was tinny and cheap compared to the solid thud of my front door. The engine sputtered. For a second, I thought it wouldn't start. I thought I would be stuck with them in my driveway waiting for a tow truck. That would have been a cruel joke. But then it caught. A cloud of blue smoke puffed out of the back, and the car rattled to life. He didn't back out carefully. He threw it into reverse and gunned it, his tires screeching slightly as he backed onto the road. He shifted gears and sped away, the muffler roaring in protest. I watched the car until it turned the corner and disappeared. The noise faded. The smoke cleared. The birds started singing again. I stood there for a moment longer, breathing in the hot air. I looked at the oil stain on my driveway. I would have to scrub that later. I would get some detergent and a stiff brush, and I would scrub it until it was gone. I would clean away the last trace of them. I stepped back inside. I grabbed the heavy brass handle of my front door. I pushed it closed. Thud. It was a solid sound. The sound of quality. The sound of a fortress. Then I reached for the deadbolt. I turned the latch. Click. That sound. That simple mechanical click. It was better than any symphony I had ever heard. It was the sound of a period being put at the end of a long, painful sentence. It was the sound of safety. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool, conditioned air of my home. They were gone. They hadn't taken my money. They hadn't taken my house. They hadn't taken my dignity. They had tried to rob me, and I had escorted them out. I pushed off the door and turned around to face my living room. The sun was streaming through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. My coffee cup was still on the table. The black binder was still there, protecting my future. I was alone. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't lonely. I was free. The sun began to dip below the tree line, casting long, golden shadows across my backyard. The heat of the day was finally breaking, replaced by a gentle evening breeze that rustled the leaves of the hydrangeas. I sat in my favorite wicker chair on the back patio. In my hand, I held a glass of chilled white wine. Condensation beaded on the glass, cool against my skin. The driveway was clean. I had gone out there with a bucket of hot, soapy water and a stiff brush right after they left. I scrubbed that oil stain until my shoulders ached, and then I scrubbed it some more. I washed away the dirt, the oil, and the bad energy they had left behind. Now, there was no trace of them, no trace of the anger, no trace of the greed, just silence. I took a sip of wine. It tasted crisp and sweet. I looked out at my garden. The solar lights I had pushed into the soil along the pathway were just starting to flicker on, like little fireflies waking up for the night. This was my view. This was my kingdom. For the last few hours, I had done a lot of thinking. When the adrenaline wears off, the quiet can be heavy. You start to second-guess yourself. You start to hear those little voices of guilt that society plants in a mother's head. Was I too hard on him? Should I have given him a little something? Am I a bad mother? I sat there, and I let those questions wash over me. I looked them right in the face. And for the first time in 42 years, the answer came back clear and strong. No, I am not a bad mother. In fact, today was probably the best parenting I have done in decades. We are raised to believe that love means sacrifice, especially us women. We are taught that to be a good mother, you have to cut off pieces of yourself to feed your children. We give them our bodies when we carry them. We give them our sleep when they are babies. We give them our dreams when we put our careers on hold to drive them to soccer practice and help with homework. And that is right. That is what you do for a child. But Ramon is not a child. He is a 42-year-old man. I realized something as I watched the sun turn the sky a brilliant shade of orange. There is a difference between helping your child climb a mountain and carrying them up it on your back. For years, I carried Ramon. When he fell, I picked him up. When he broke something, I bought him a new one. When he made a mess, I cleaned it up. I thought I was loving him, but I wasn't. I was crippling him. I was teaching him that actions don't have consequences. I was teaching him that mommy is an endless resource that will never run dry. But I am not endless. I am human, and I am 68 years old. If I had signed that deed today, if I had let them bully me into giving up my security, what would have happened? They would have burned through that money in a year, maybe two. The debts would have piled up again. The cars would have broken down again, and I would be destitute. I would be the one sleeping on a pull-out couch, afraid to turn on the heat because I couldn't afford the bill. And would they take care of me then? Would Beverly change my sheets? Would Ramon drive me to the doctor? I took another sip of wine, letting the truth settle in my chest. No, they wouldn't. They would see me as a burden. I looked at the black binder sitting on the patio table next to me. The irrevocable trust. It wasn't just a legal document. It was a shield. It was a declaration that my life has value. We spend our lives raising our children to be strong. We pray they will be independent. But when they refuse to stand on their own 2 feet, we cannot let them cut off ours. I stretched my legs out. My knees didn't hurt. My heart didn't race. I thought about the future. For years, I looked at the future with fear. I worried about running out of money. I worried about being alone. I worried about what would happen to Ramon. Tonight, looking at my beautiful yard, I didn't feel fear. I felt excitement. Tomorrow, I am going to plant tulips in the front bed. Next week, I am going to join the book club at the library. Maybe next month, I will take a trip to the coast. Just me. I will stay in a nice hotel, and I will order room service, and I won't worry about the cost because my portfolio is balanced and my assets are protected. The phone in my pocket buzzed. I pulled it out. It was a text from Beverly. It was a long paragraph, probably full of more guilt trips or maybe a fake apology or maybe a threat. I didn't read it. I tapped the little icon in the corner of the screen. I scrolled down to the bottom. I pressed block caller. Then I went to Ramon's name. I hesitated for just a fraction of a second. A mother's heart is a stubborn thing, but then I remembered the way he kicked his car. I remembered the way he looked at my furniture like it was merchandise. I pressed block caller. I put the phone back on the table, screen down. The sun was gone now. The sky was a deep, velvety purple. The solar lights were shining bright, illuminating the path through my garden. I am not just a widow. I am not just a retired clerk. I am the owner of this house. I am the trustee of my own fate. I finished my wine and set the glass down. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around my shoulders against the evening chill. It was a good chill. It made me feel alive. I looked out into the dark, smiling. Let them call. Let them drive by. Let them scream at the wind. The drawbridge is up. The gate is locked. And the queen is finally, truly safe in her castle. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.